periodically on weekends, she would say to me, like, we gotta outfit that gym. And I'd say, I know, I know. And we'd both Google like designer weights, nice weights, beautiful weights, pretty weights, home decor weights. And we would both come to each other and be like, I'm like, I can't find anything. We both just were like, are we bad at Google? Like, I don't understand that there has to be something out there. Fast forward, my mom was having her sort of end of year goal setting time. And she really was like, I am going to make this gym. And so she came to me and she said, what if you just designed a set of weights and we designed some fitness equipment and we'll use our manufacturing background and we'll get a set made for ourselves. Yeah, okay, we can do that. And so I started thinking about this. Everyone we told, side note, everyone we told was like, well, will you make me a set? I hate my weights. I hide them under my bed. I hide them in my closet. I put them in my basement. And so we were like, this is crazy, this many people. So my mom says to me one day, I think I'm going to turn this into a little business for myself.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, hosted by Krissy Vann. Together, we're uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by the Personal Training Institute. Learn how to train, gain, and retain clients. Visit bcpti.ca. Meet Kiara LeBlanc, CEO of Lifted Movement. Kiara's story goes way back to the days when she was just a young girl growing up in the heart of the wellness industry. You see, her roots are firmly entwined with Saje Natural Wellness, where her parents embarked on a journey that would eventually lead to the birth of a wellness empire. In today's episode, you'll learn about her journey growing up in the wellness industry. As she was immersed in the world of essential oils and holistic wellness, she was also honing her entrepreneurial spirit. She'll share her transition from working with Saje Natural Wellness to founding Lifted Movement after a ski accident altered her lens of how she viewed physical activity and also brought to her attention a notable gap in the fitness equipment industry that she was all too ready to address. Plus, we'll gain valuable insights from Kiara's entrepreneurial journey, as her story is not just about fitness and wellness, but it's about a personal connection to a legacy and a vision for the future. Before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes every Wednesday featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. Plus, every other Monday, we have a new episode of Exercise Snacks Bite-Sized Science, where we explore the latest science and research directly with the scientists and researchers themselves. I'm your host, Krissy Vann, and this is ATFW. We're both based here in British Columbia, so Saje Wellness is a brand we're very familiar with. Obviously, you've been in sensation across North America, and we're going to be talking about Lifted Movement, but this isn't the only business, obviously, you've been involved in. So talk to me a little bit about how you were really introduced to entrepreneurship from a very young age.
Growing up, I had what I used to call a special love, special hate relationship with the brand when I was young. You know, it felt like I was an only child, but when people would say, how many siblings do you have? I would usually just quote the number of stores that we had because I felt like that took the same amount of attention as if I'd had a sibling, if not more. And so, yeah, I think I grew up equal parts being proud of my parents and, you know, having my days where, you know, it meant that I didn't get to see my mom or I didn't get to see dad or leading up to holiday, you know, retail is mental. And so the good thing that came from it was we always had a commitment that we got away as a family for Christmas because I never saw them kind of leading up to the holidays. So that's been a lucky tradition that stayed. And truthfully, I really thought I never wanted to do it. I thought that entrepreneurship looked really hard. I thought that it just didn't seem like it was for me. And then over the years and through working with them, I kind of felt like there was nothing else that I would ever be as happy doing. So it was a real 180 for me in my life.
What was it that got your family into the wellness space into the first place?
Yeah, so it was a combination of two things. So my dad suffered a lot of car accidents. Ironically, he raced cars when he was younger and made it out scratch-free, and then had 3 really bad taxi accidents. And
of course, oh my God, out of all the
of all the things, he's basically allergic to taxis today. And so he was left with just a myriad of body issues, and he's in and out of hospitals. And then finally his final straw was they said to him, you know, now you're on this, you're on that. We don't really know what's keeping you going. So we're going to add in Prozac because you're depressed. And that was his sort of like no, like there has to be a better way. And so he heard on the radio about a wellness essential oils symposium in Europe. And he said to my mom, like, let's go. My mom is a wanderlust adventure at heart, and she loves retail. And so the combination kind of came together. My dad came home with all these essential oils. He started formulating things. He fixed his migraines. He fixed his backaches. He fixed his stomach, and he was just giving things away as fast as he could blend them. He was giving them away. And so we kind of joke that my mom was just the cash register between him and the door. And that sort of the merging was born. And my mom's really passionate about community service and how we treat the people who walk through the door. She grew up in her mom's fabric store. And so she in a really, really small town, Ontario. And so for her, it was all about the community and people coming in and having like a different kind of retail experience. And so they brought together the 100% natural ingredients that my dad cared about and the outrageous customer service that my mom cared about. And together that was Sage.
Well, and then you add the magic of it of really being rooted and believing in the purpose. And I feel like if
Hmm.
you had that determination and behind it, you can't go wrong from there. But of course,
Hmm.
as you mentioned, you eventually went full circle and was like, hey, this is something that I'd like to get involved with. And from what I understand, it was social media that you were like, there's a way that we could do this right. So talk to me about your little entrance into pivoting the business a little bit because you were
Yeah.
at the forefront of that.
Yeah. I was really blessed that I grew up wanting to be an actor. That was my life passion. I used to tell my parents, like, don't worry, whatever happens to Sage, I'll be the next Julia Roberts and I'll fix this all. It's going to be okay. And so what ended up happening was my mom was leading a new website, and I was sitting in her office and I was reading a script. And the gentleman said to her, like, when I pass this over to you, you're going to need someone to run social media and your site. And I remember my mom saying, this was 2010. And she said, a whole person to do that? This to her was outrageous. And he said, it doesn't, you don't have to hire an expert. It could be her. And at the time I was in that, like, I didn't want to be the waitress slash actor. And so I kind of jumped at it. I said, okay, like, can I do this on 30 hours a week and I can go to auditions the other 10 hours? And they said, sure. And so I started doing it. And the digital agency brought me in and they kind of taught me everything that I knew digitally, social, all of that. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I fell in love. I mean, we were a team at our creative office. We were a team of about 8. And so it was scrappy and it was fast and it was interesting. And I was learning and I was 20 years old and it was just like my brain was on fire. And about 8 months in, my agent called me and she was like, is your heart in this? And I was like, not really. Like I would get auditions and be like, oh man, I don't want to miss the team meeting. And my mom would be like, what are you talking about? Like, it's an audition for a TV show that and I was like, but I don't really, and I just stopped really wanting to go. And so it was this sort of happy accident. And then I stayed on in the capacity of digital and marketing. And then another happy accident happened when the product development person couldn't go on a buying trip. And my mom was lamenting to my dad, like, this is going to be like a heavy load to do this. It was like a 3-week trip in Asia and all these buying shows. And again, I was like, well, I'll go with you. And I can kind of just be your assistant and help you. And I walked into the buying shows in Hong Kong and in China, and my brain exploded with just the possibilities of what the brand could be. And so I always joke that really, if we summed up my 10 years at Sage, my passion was to make natural sexy. I think that for a lot of years, natural was like that, where do you keep your vitamin C? Like only in the
Mhm.
last 2 years are we starting to see some like beautiful probiotics and vitamin C's and all these things coming out. For so many years, I called it like the personal care grave. There was like and then
You're
when
not
you're like,
wrong.
when you're really sick, you open the drawer and you're like, where's that zinc bottle? But like, you don't keep it out and therefore you don't really use it as much. That was really my passion, was if we could make this beautiful, if we made this something that was on your counter, in your purse, you're going to remember to use it. It's going to be around you. And so that was my passion with the branding, the product development, our stores, our creative. And that was sort of how my role evolved.
And how was it being a mother-daughter duo? Because anyone that is a daughter of a mom, like those dynamics can have so many different layers to them. And then when you add a
Yeah.
professional sense, how was that balance?
Yeah, I think I got lucky in that my mom was really close to her dad, and he was a cattle farmer in small town Ontario, and he worked with his son. And so my mom kind of grew up watching this father-son dynamic. And so I think I got really lucky in that she was really good at it really quickly. She was really good at holding my feet to the fire. She was really good at still giving me the feedback. Like we had we called it top grading at Sage. And it was a way of just saying like, this is how you're performing. So we had A player, B, C, and C. And at some point in my life, my health was a real challenge for me. And it just meant I was showing up at the office like a storm cloud. And I think, a lot of moms would have had a really tough time saying something. She knew I was sick. She knew the why, but she still sat down and said, I have to give you a really tough review. Like you're not performing, you're not showing up well. And this was really early in my career. And it was like, those are the moments when I go, yeah, was that really hard to hear from my mom? Yes. And did it shape who I am? Yes. And so, there's times when you feel like, do I have to get an annual review every night? It's like, it's Thanksgiving. Like, I hear you, I'll work on that. So, yes, it has its challenges. And, I wouldn't trade it because I feel like, as cheesy as it sounds, like feedback is the breakfast of champions. Any young person that I talk to who's like, what's your number one career advice? I'll be like, become someone easy to give feedback to. We definitely lived by to protect is to attack. So if you're not holding me as able to hear, it's not helping me. And so that's where I feel really blessed and lucky about how the relationship went and how kind of seamless my mom made it and how she was willing to do the hard thing with me and always give me the feedback so that we could have a great relationship. And to this day, she's an absolute best friend of mine.
Talk about an amazing way to grow together as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the two of you clearly an unstoppable force because naturally, even when things have gone very well with this first business, you've decided to bring something else to the forefront and a really
Yeah.
cool thing in this space. So, talk to me about the birth of Lifted Movement. How did this even become an idea in the brain space?
Yeah, so it was kind of a combination of two things. So, one, we have a home in Whistler, and my mom has wanted to make a gym there for as long as we've had the home, so maybe 6 years. And so she would periodically on weekends, she would say to me, like, we gotta outfit that gym. And I'd say, I know, I know. And we'd both Google like designer weights, nice weights, beautiful weights, pretty weights, home decor weights. And we would both come to each other and be like, I can't find anything. We both just were like, are we bad at Google? Like, I don't understand that there has to be something out there. And so we just kept, and then, life would go on and on we went. And so fast forward, and my mom was having her sort of end of year goal setting time. And she really was like, I am going to make this gym. And so she came to me and she said, what if you just designed a set of weights and we designed some fitness equipment and we'll use our manufacturing background and we'll get a set made for ourselves. Yeah, okay, we can do that. And so I started thinking about this. Everyone we told, side note, everyone we told was like, well, will you make me a set? I hate my weights. I hide them under my bed. I hide them in my closet. I put them in my basement. And so we were like, this is crazy. This many people. So my mom says to me one day, and I'm starting a different business at this point, and I'm in the early phases of figuring out the brand and all of this. And she says to me, I think I'm going to turn this into a little business for myself. And I said, the weights? And she goes, yeah. And I said, oh, okay, great. Now, on a sidebar, I've had a ski accident and I've torn my ACL. And she decides to tell me the day of surgery. My mom has this really great way of she'll try and distract me with things, and I don't even realize that she's doing it. So we're driving into the surgery
Smart
center.
woman.
I'm obviously hyperventilating. She says to me, I think I'm going to hire a CEO. I've really done that phase in my life, and I'm going to hire a CEO to run this weights business. And I said, you're like, okay, great. I'm about to get my knee chopped open. I can't think about this right now. And I'm like, in my mind, like I look back down, I'm like, oh, you were trying to distract me. At the moment, I was like, stop talking about this. I don't care. And so we go in, I get my knee surgery. And now fast forward about 3 weeks, and I am really realizing if I don't truly choose rehab, I'm never going to ski again. I'm never going to,
Yeah.
run the same way, play the same way, chase my dog the same way, all of the things. So I'm like in this overwhelm, and I'm starting an alcohol concept at the time. And my mom's over here going to start a fitness business and hire a CEO. And I was like, something is really wrong. So I text her, I'm like, we
You're
just
like,
go for
one of these
lunch.
things is not like the other.
Yeah, I'm like, something's broken here. So I say to her, let's go for lunch. I get my sticks and I get myself out. It's my first outing. And I remember being so overwhelmed that like just even, moving my body, getting in a car,
Course.
going to a restaurant and all of the things. So we get seated down and I said, Mom, I found your CEO. She's like, you did? And I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. And she said, but your business. And I was like, I'm going to call the investors and I'm going to see what they say. And so I called my original group. Everybody was more excited about this concept than the last. The growth rate of the wellness and fitness industry is obviously outpacing the alcohol industry. And so I feel really kind of lucky that I had this horrible ski accident that turned into really the best thing that's ever happened. And so I said, yeah, let's do it. And from that day forward, we just started. I started drawing and dreaming and branding and all the things.
So, what year then would you have come up with this concept?
We started talking about it like when mom was in like dreamland about it would have been 2020, and then 2021 is really when we started to like put things on paper and, make things make sense.
So, what would be the process then when you are looking to be like, this is an idea that I've got in my brain? Because I'm sure there's people out there that are like, I have the vision, I want to bring
Hmm.
this to a reality. Where do I even begin?
Hmm. Lots of places to begin. I would say the number one for me, now I would say it's different for every different category of business. So for me, I'm a product person. I want to make the best thing in the world. Like that's my passion. Some people are really passionate about talking to you about it. Some people are really passionate about, running the numbers around. Like I'm the thing, I'm the what. And then there's lots of people who are passionate about the how. And so for me, it was I needed to like really crystallize in my mind, like, what is this product line gonna look like? And so how I started was I sat down in Illustrator and just night after night after day, I was just drawing and dreaming and rendering and sort of just trying to figure out like what was this line gonna feel like? Once I had what the line felt like, and I actually never talked to Kate about it. I made this line in my mind and I said, because she said, I feel like I can see it. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna go away and do something. I want to come back to you. And I put it in front of her and she was like, that's what I was seeing. And I was like, great.
Awesome.
Great. So it was kind of one of those like we were both seeing the same thing, which always makes it easier than like, oh, what? I thought the whole brand was red and orange.
100%.
Yeah. So that was
Like,
that was a
whoa, we
happy.
had way different visions.
Yeah, yeah. So to find out we had the same vision. And so from there, once we had the product line, then for me, it was about what is this brand? What do we represent? What do we care about? And one of the things that Mom and I both identified was we've both really procrastinated movement in our life. That's been an easy thing. Like we're working way, way, way too much, traveling too much at Sage. And so while we cared about wellness deeply, our physical wellness was a little bit our fitness wellness was a little bit put on the back burner. And so we said that we wanted to start a brand that the mission was ending procrastination. And so that really, like the day that we identified that, it really anchored something for me. Like on the days when it's like, I don't have time for that. I don't feel like it. It was like, no, we're ending procrastination. And that doesn't mean start on Monday. That doesn't mean start January 1st. That doesn't mean start in the summer. That doesn't mean I just do that booty work boot camp thing that is like now it's every day it's more incorporated into our life. And so once we had the product line, the mission, and then starting to put the brand sort of tone around it, and then the next step was to go figure out who and how I was going to fund this. And so I sat down I call my dad my chief compensation officer. He's got a really great mind with things like
Great
this. So
title.
yeah, yeah. So I sat down with him and I said, okay, how would you think about this? This is what I think I need. My mom is our amazing CFO. We always joked at Sage that she was like a tortured CFO because she would like rerun everything. She was always like numbers, numbers, numbers. And so she's done a great job of business plan. So I sit down with my dad. I'm like, okay, how would you think about this? And so we think it through and he says, okay, now my thinking is if you get a yes, like plan for 1 in 10 yeses. Okay, great. So I make my list of people I'm going to pitch to. And I did 21 presentations and I got 21 yeses. People were just like really excited about it. Everyone I talked to had weights they were hiding somewhere.
I'm
And
sure.
so it was just this like, it kind of felt like we started this business and everywhere I looked, there was just green lights of just people being really excited about it. So I think that, my number one thing though is that eventually you are going to hit speed bumps and eventually you are going to hit walls and eventually you're going to hit boulders up a hill. So as long as it's a product line that you like really, really, really love, like it's something that you just like gets you out of bed in the morning, then you find a way. So I know everyone's process is different, but for me, I had to fall in love with the product because that would make me get out of bed in the morning.
what an appropriate analogy too, considering it was end procrastination. So you've given yourself the reason to
Yeah.
not and get out of bed. And it's
Yeah.
so smart as well, because I'm sure you know the statistics as well. When it comes to movement, you're not alone in people that have perhaps neglected that as a priority in their lives. It's
Hmm.
about 80% of Canadians and similar statistics in the United States of people that don't get enough movement.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really big misconception that it needs to be a bold move to start introducing that in our lives, where really
Hmm.
it's taking those small steps. And for yourself,
Hmm.
I mean, you're introducing a beautiful aesthetic into someone's space that is multi-purpose. It can be that little step in their day to pick up those weights. How do you
Hmm.
visualize them being utilized then? Like, how are they sold? Is it in a set of dumbbells, or what's kind of the
Yeah,
goal
yeah.
there?
So the our sort of opening line will be a set of free weights, a set of kettlebells. And so with our free weights, we range from 2 pound, we have 2 and 3 pound little hand weights. So more of your Pilates, yoga, spin. And then we have free weights that range from 5 to 25 pounds. And we did a lot of increments because one of the things that I learned in this journey is that women chronically underlift. And with our bone density decreasing when we hit menopause, we really want to start lifting heavier things sooner. And so we
Yes.
did
Say it louder for
five,
the ones in the
8.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. Lift heavier, lift sooner.
Yes.
And so we did 5, 8, 10s, 12s, 15, 18, 20,
Love
25.
that.
So there's lots of increments there because going from 10 to 15 is like, that's often too much. And I've seen that at lots of gyms. And then we'll have a line of kettlebells that pick up where the free weights drop off. So they'll be 30 and 40. And so that's sort of our weights collection. And then we've got resistance bands, both fabric and rubber. And then with the line that I'm like, kind of the most excited about, if I can say that, not that I have a favorite of my children, would be our furniture line. Because exactly to your point, I want to get this, it's kind of the same thing it's exactly the same thing as I wanted to do with Sage, which is if it's on your counter, if it's in your life, you're going to use it more than if it's in a basement, under your bed, in a closet. And so we have what I call our furniture line. So we have 3 different ways for you to proudly display. We say when you don't have to hide it, you'll reach for it. And so we have something that just holds 3 sets of weights in a beautiful arc. And the vision really was that it's unobtrusive, that you can walk in a room and actually not notice that someone has fitness equipment in their living room, that it's like home decor meets fitness equipment instead of this being like, oh, COVID hit, you've got a gym in your living room, which like, that's fine. And that suits some people. But I know a lot of people who are, they're house proud and they want their place to feel like a certain way. And they want a living room that feels like a living room. One night I was sitting up and I was drawing the free weights, and we have a built-in bar in our home in Whistler. And so honestly, I looked up and I saw the built-in bar and I got up and I made a Negroni and I kept working. And then I thought, oh shoot, I was gonna ride tonight and I'm not gonna do that. And then I thought, if I'd looked up and I'd just seen fitness equipment, probably would have remembered to train first. Now I might have had my Negroni after, but I still would have remembered to train first. And so that really got me thinking about just that, like that the inspiration that visual is in our life, and how, if I get water on my desk, I remember to drink water. If I
Mhm.
see this, I remember to. So our movement cart, which is kind of our hero SKU, holds the entire collection, feels very much just like it's a 2 foot in diameter side table. It holds all the free weights, the kettlebells. It's got a wood lid that comes off that you can put all of your unsightlies. It's got a steel tube down the center that holds it all up, that you can roll up your yoga mat or movement mat and put that down the barrel.
Very
So,
cool.
because yoga mats are a bit of an eyesore. And so all of that. So it's like your gym in 2 square feet, all able to it's on wheels. You can roll it away. And then, someone could easily walk by that. Someone could come to your house 10 times and think, oh, nice side table. And then realize, oh, that's actually a 2 foot gym.
I love that. And especially when you think of so many people who have much smaller square footage as well, it's increasing that
Hmm.
accessibility to have that in your home while it not
Hmm.
becoming the eyesore that, as you mentioned, it often is. I know
Yeah.
that we're a platform that, yes, you and I are talking visually, but many people are just listening. So, are you able to describe the aesthetic of the weights that you've made? Obviously, I've followed you, I've seen them, but maybe
Hmm.
talk people through just how different it is compared to that typical little piece of metal with black knobbly ends on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so what we found is what existed when I was on my quest of designer weights, best weights, beautiful weights, was, there's, like you mentioned, there's the steel and the black, or there's what I call the jelly beans. So there's the bright, Costco wrapped in red, wrapped in yellow. And so what I wanted to do with our first launch is called our Cloud Collection. And so the
As a
intention of the
former
cloud.
weather anchor, I just have to say, love the name.
Oh, great. And so that is really supposed to be not an aesthetic decision, meaning it is all white. It has Carrara marble end caps. In the end caps, on one side is our beautiful icon etched, and on the other side gives you the weight that you're lifting, so 8, 10, 12. And then there is down the center where you grip, we added and this is a shout out to my mom. I had the weights totally ready to launch, and she kept saying, I don't like the feeling in my hands. And as I handed them to more and more women, I kept hearing the same thing. Like, or I would ask, like, how do you feel about weights? Like, I don't really like holding them. It's like, okay, so any barrier that's going to make you procrastinate, I want to delete it. So we pumped the brakes and we added a silicone grip. And now I will say she's definitely right. And it just gives such a nicer feel. And as you know, like when you engage hands more and you grip more, you're turning on more of your entire body, right? So it's not only visually beautiful, it feels better, it's warmer, it's also helping you function and have something that you really want to grip onto versus something kind of cold and hard that you want to put down.
Well, and my manicurist doesn't always appreciate the inevitable calluses that happen on
Yeah,
traditional weights.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if it's something
exactly.
that's going to mitigate a little bit of that, that's also a really nice barrier to have removed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then our kettlebells the same. So they're dipped in a beautiful white coating. They're like a nice semi-gloss, and then they've got a marble inserted on the front. And then that also says the level of weight that you're lifting.
Well, I know that you have had, I believe, the opportunity to go to a couple of interior design shows, or maybe were you at the one that was just in
We did
Vancouver?
IDS in Vancouver. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
tell me a little bit about, because it's exactly as you said, you looked in the market, you couldn't find anything like this, which means for a lot of
hmm
people, it's their first meeting of lifted movement. So what was some of the feedback?
You know, my favorite thing that happened would be people walk up and say, "What's this?" And that for me was like, yes, we've done it.
Nailed it.
It was like, I want it to feel like fitness equipment it's the second thought. It's like, oh, are these free weights? And then people would say, are these real? Are these sculptures? I'd be like, yes, exactly, exactly. Great. And so yeah, I'd say that was one reaction. And then the other would be designers being so grateful because they would be like, yeah, people ask me to, like, I'm building this beautiful home, and then they ask me to build a home gym. I'll build them a beautiful gym, but then I don't know what to put in it. And so those were sort of my two favorite pieces of feedback was, oh, finally I have something to put in a gym where I can keep the aesthetic of the home.
Very cool. Well, I know that lifted movement now, I mean, it's pretty amazing to think 2020, now we're just a few short years later, it's come to life. So what are your plans for the future as you're launching your baby, so to speak?
Yeah, so our cloud collection is launched. Our kettlebells are coming in March. Our furniture is arriving in March. So we're kind of like we're still in the like just getting the wheels on the bus going, getting everything, finalized. And then as I look to the future, I really there's two things. One is I will look to other colorways. And so we're in conversations about maybe something in more of like a gunmetal anodized black feeling, and then do black marble end caps. So we've been asked a lot about that, and I would say everyone I meet is like, what color is next? And so we'll be figuring out what comes after the cloud collection, and then I just want to continue to figure out how do we really innovate in the category of home decor is now movement equipment. So how does my TV watching experience not just be a TV watching experience? I'm sitting in the living room with people, like, how do we make movement more a part of our life? I was interviewing, I'm really guided by a movement expert that I work with, and I was interviewing him, and I said to him, okay, so if I'm just starting out, like really, I hear so many different answers. What is the number? How many minutes a day should I be training? And his number shocked me. He said 0. And I was like, what? And he's like, ideally, we would live lives. He's like, you said ideal world. And I'm like, yeah, ideal world. And he's like, okay, ideally, we would live lives that we moved so much that it wouldn't be a pause my day at 9 a.m.,
Totally.
train, go back. He says, you're still a sedentary person. If you work out, you can go do a crazy hard workout from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then you can go to your desk at 8:30. If you sit there till 6, you are still a sedentary person.
Yep.
And I think like hearing that for me was like, a real like hit on the head. And so he was like, if you were on a call, like get up in farmer's carry and walk around your office on your call and then sit back down. And that's all you did. You just did that one thing. And then in 70 minutes, get up and do like, and so we've just got weights sat around our office. We've got a standing desk and a seated area. So we kind of rotate in between. And so I really just want to start to figure out what are all the ways that keep us sedentary and how in a beautiful way and not these kind of, there's some ergonomic stuff out there, but I wouldn't say it's my
It's
favorite
not the
aesthetic.
sexiest.
It's not the sexiest. And so that's really going to be our future and passion is how do we make our lives more movement focused without needing to turn our living rooms into, ergonomic gyms that maybe don't look like we want them to.
I think I've spoken with somebody about this on this podcast as well, because exactly that. We're humans. We are meant to move. The way that we live our lives, or the majority live their lives, is completely counterintuitive as to how we should. It's a reason why sitting is comparatively just as bad for you as smoking.
Mhm,
And you're
mhm,
exactly right. If you're just carving out that little time for movement, that's a great first step, but we need to be
mhm,
moving more. And that's why a lot of people sometimes feel more resistance to do physical activity as well, because innately, like we just weren't designed to be like, hey, I'm going to carve out this 30 minutes to move my body. There's a
mhm,
reason why there's that resistance. And I love
mhm.
that you're on this path of figuring out yet another way that can help people break that down. You've obviously had a vast experience growing since your early 20s into this incredible story of entrepreneurship, stepping into this role of CEO. What have been some of your biggest takeaways from the experience so far, or most valuable lessons?
Um, I think the first most valuable lesson is about who you surround yourself with. Like this, it's gonna get hard. It's gonna feel yucky. There's gonna be days you want to quit. Like it's just inevitable. And so I think, I feel really blessed to work with a small but mighty team that really inspire me. And that on the days when I just feel like I don't want to move or I don't want this or it's like I have a different why. And so I would say that's number one. And number two, like I feel I've got a complicated health history with autoimmune condition things. And so I think being connected to the why of the brand, like I always watched my dad's passion with Sage. There's no one who can talk to you about a pocket pharmacy like he can because he formulated it for his things. It saved his life, right? So like no one talks to him about pocket pharmacy and doesn't want three, one for them, one for their mom, one for their best friend. Like it's just, and so I think I feel really lucky to have watched that. And for me, that's lifted. So for me, while I cared deeply about the Sage line and I loved the Sage brand and I loved crafting it, lifted for me is really so connected to my why. And so that makes it about so much more than the nuts and the bolts of business. And I think that I was talking to a friend once and he'd started a business and I asked him why that industry. And he said, well, I looked it up as the lowest bankruptcy rate. And I was like, it's,
You're
and
like, dig
funnily enough,
deeper.
it didn't 7 years later, it didn't last. And so I think that to me is like, if we don't have that why that's like so in us, some the bumps are going to happen and you're not going to feel like keeping going. And so I think that's been the people and the connection with the why are my two big takeaways.
Well, and kind of on that lasting note, this whole business that you've started is that celebration of movement. So just tell me how much movement, getting that physical activity has meant to you, especially coming out of a significant injury, which sounds like it. I mean, so many people don't value it until they encounter illness or an obstacle like
Mhm.
that. So, how transformative has movement been for your life personally?
Yeah, I would say it completely changed who I am. When I came out of my ACL surgery, before my surgery, they told me I was too weak to even get surgery. And so I feel really lucky that I had a team in Vancouver on my side saying, no, we're going to help you rehab. We understand. I did acupuncture every day for about 6 weeks and then every other day for another 6 weeks. And again, when I asked like, how often do I need to be working on this? The answer was 5 times a day. And I think that just brain shift of really committing. And I had to find, like we call it at Lifted, your fitness for a different why. So I had to find my why in it. I couldn't do it because I wanted like, oh, I wouldn't cycle 5 times a day for nice legs. I
Yeah.
would cycle 5 times a day because I want to be able to chase my dog, because I want to be able to help my family bring in the groceries and I'm not like the kid sitting on the couch being like, sorry, I can't do that. I move to be pain-free. And I move so that I can be a kinder person in my life. And I really started to see just how much happier I was. And in the early days, it was hard. I had to sit on a Peloton and my knee could rotate about, 10 degrees. And I would
Yeah.
just sit there and push 10 degrees, and anything past that, I'd start crying. And then it'd be like, okay, you get off. And then, an hour later I'd get back on and 10 degrees, and maybe the next day, 11 degrees. And,
And
and
that's
that
a
was,
celebration when you get that
and that was a
11.
celebration. Yeah. The
Yes.
first time that my leg went around in a full circle, I was really lucky to be at the gym that I train at, and everybody broke out and was clapping
Nice.
after watching me just sit there 10 degrees, 11 degrees. And so I think getting those triumphs and then starting to really connect to, oh, this has changed the way I ski. This has changed the way I go upstairs. This has changed my energy levels. This has changed my desire. Like, everyone gets up to Whistler. I want to help people bring in their bags versus be like, oh God, I hope nobody notices that I'm like, withering off over here because I don't want to hurt my back if I help. And so those have been like, it's been that different why. Whereas when I was younger in the acting and modeling world, I trained for the wrong why.
Yep.
I was
You and
signed
me
by
both.
Ford Models at 13, and I don't recommend it. I was at the gym because of measurements, not because of how I wanted to feel, not because of how I wanted to be able to function in my life. And so now I throw out the scale and I train for how I feel and how my body functions.
It's such a refreshing perspective. And I think the exciting part is that more and more of us are understanding this narrative shift, really
Mm-hmm.
seeing the scope of physical activity as exactly that: health span, longevity, being able to move. As women,
Mm-hmm.
especially bone density, we talk about our mental clarity, battling depression and anxiety, scientifically proven, our social community and social wellness. And because of you, we get to do it in a beautiful way. So
Thank you.
I so appreciate your inspiring story and really carving out time and space, especially as I know the holidays are where stress just becomes exponential. Add starting
Yeah.
a business on top of it, I'm sure, makes things even more so. So thank you
It's
so
never
much for
boring.
your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Krissy Vann. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.